When you're trying to buy a home using your VA loan benefits, there is a possibility that you could face some discrimination. In today's video, I'll be going over what VA loan discrimination is, how often it happens, and what you can do to combat any objection that you receive. Now, as you can tell, it's Friday. Why? Because I'm wearing red. I love wearing red every Friday along with all the other employees here at Low VA Rates. Red stands for Remember Everyone Deployed. Speaking of red, down in the right corner of your screen, there's probably a red follow, like, or subscribe button. Do that so that you can follow along with us every time we put out new content. So let's get back into it. VA loan discrimination. Number one, I hope it's never happened to you, but we're going to talk about why it does happen and why it shouldn't. So we're going to jump right in on this VA loan discrimination. In general, when we refer to VA loan discrimination, we're talking about the bias some realtors and sellers have against VA loans. In these types of situations, the seller or the real estate agent really misunderstand how VA loans work. Because of these misunderstandings, they may refuse to even consider offers being made by borrowers who are choosing to use a VA loan. Now, this is incredibly unfair, especially when you consider how much our military service members, both men and women and veterans, have sacrificed. Their service can sometimes make establishing their financial qualifications for a mortgage a little bit more difficult. Now, things like deployment, for example, can make it harder to make on-time credit payments, which can then lower credit scores. Thanks to the no down payment and no minimum credit score requirements on VA loans, along with the limits on allowable closing costs, VA loans make it easier for our military to qualify for a mortgage. And because of this type of discrimination, it's not illegal. It does happen much more often than we would like to admit. So just how common is VA loan discrimination? Well, it's impossible to say exactly how prevalent it is, since there hasn't really been any research or tracking, official tracking done. But in our experience, we do thousands and thousands of VA loans every single year. It is happening quite often. Now, like I mentioned before, discrimination against VA loans, it's not against the law. I'm going to put that right up here because I think that's important. Maybe one day it will become against the law. Not against the law. You know, there are all sorts of protected classes in our country. Elderly, you know, there are all sorts of regulations and laws about discriminating against race, gender, sexuality, that sort of stuff. Why isn't it against the law to discriminate when a veteran wants to use their loan? Well, maybe one day that will be the case. But this lack of legal protection makes it harder to combat this VA loan discrimination. Now, because of this, it's been one of our missions here at Low VA Rates to dispute the myths that lead to VA loan discrimination. We even have an entire playlist, go to YouTube or on our website, focused exclusively on busting VA loan myths that you can use to help spread the word and hopefully reduce the discrimination our veterans are facing. So, up next, I'd like to talk about some of the common myths that often lead to this VA loan discrimination. You're going to encounter these as a veteran many times. Number one, VA loans are less likely to close. We hear this all the time. VA less likely to close. You know, if a seller of the home has come to the conclusion, right or wrong, that if a veteran's using a VA loan to buy their home, it may not close on time, they're going to be less likely to want to accept your offer. Okay? Also, we hear all the time, VA loans are just take longer. That's something that realtors, VA loans take longer. Realtors, I have myself watching how I say realtor because there are comments all the time that I'm saying it wrong below our YouTube video. So I'm going to say agents, real estate agents. VA loans take longer. A lot of agents are convinced that VA loans take longer to close. The VA appraisal process delays the closing. That's what they think. They think that if you have to go get a VA appraisal, it's going to make it longer. It's going to delay the process. Now listen, we hear all the time VA appraisers are way too strict. They undervalue the homes more often than other appraisers. So again, all of this is kind of like discrimination, not against the veteran per se, but against the VA loan, which, as we know, is one of, if not the very best loans out there. Now, Sellers also have this misunderstanding that if they sell a loan to a veteran using a VA loan or a military service member, that they're going to have to pay all of this buyer's closing costs. That's not the case. That is not the case at all. Real estate agents also feel like, hey, I'm going to have to take a lower commission if I help you sell your home to a VA borrower. That's also not true at all. Okay, a lot of these beliefs stem from lack of knowledge. Also, people just assume, well, if the buyer, the veteran, doesn't have to put any money down for their down payment, then of course I'm going to be stuck covering all sorts of costs for them as the seller. Again, has no negative impact on the seller. That's just not how it works. So there's also been hesitation that we've seen in the marketplace from sellers since they believe this government program, they're going to have to encounter all sorts of red tape. Again, misconception. You go to our myths playlist that I talked about. We go into detail on each one of these throughout that kind of overcoming misconceptions or busting these myths. Now, finally, most of these myths are simply based on either old rules that are outdated and may have been something that we dealt with in the past years ago, or frankly, just, I guess, real estate gossip, misinformation, not true. So here's what you can do if you experience loan discrimination as a veteran. Number one, for starters, you can actually circumvent a lot of these issues by finding a real estate agent who works with veterans, who focuses on veterans. There's so many retired military service members, veterans out there who have gotten into real estate. And like us here at Low VA Rates, we focus on VA loans. There are a ton of real estate agents out there who their mission is to help veterans use their VA home loan benefits to buy a home. So go find an experienced VA real estate agent. Now, having their knowledge on your side means that they are going to be much more proactive in educating the potential sellers when they're helping you negotiate the purchase of a home. This brings me to my next point, probably the most important. Education. Okay, guys, this is what Low VA Rates and our YouTube channel and all of our content is focused on. That's a weird N there. Education. We put out all of this information so that you can be more educated. If you do find a home that you love, but the listing states something like only for conventional or FHA loans, again, you're going to want to go find that real estate agent that understands VA financing and military borrowers and reach out to them before you place an offer. They're going to be very helpful. That way, they can ask, why is the limitation on your listing? You know, they're going to go to the seller and say, why are you putting that on there? And then depending on the answer, either you and or together your real estate agent is going to be educated and able to share why that objection isn't necessary and it's just downright not true. Then once the seller and the seller's agent understand that VA loans won't cause any extra headaches, they're more likely to consider your offer, and you can then move forward without just tossing the VA loan out. But if your agent isn't familiar with the VA loan program, it will be on you to educate them so that you can then advocate for yourself and get your agent to help you. In order to do that, let's go over the facts that dispute each of these myths that I've talked about already on the board here, okay? Myth number one, VA borrowers are less qualified. Well, that's just not the case. VA loan borrowers are just as qualified to buy a home as any other borrower. Just because they aren't required to put a down payment on the home doesn't mean they can't afford a down payment or don't have one. In fact, it makes them more likely to be able to close and afford your home because they don't have to go, run around trying to find the money, put the money together for a down payment. Myth number two, VA loans are less likely to close. Well, we've gone into a lot of detail on prior videos on this, but I want to just reiterate. ICE mortgage technology, or ICE, formerly called Ellie Mae, is one of the biggest loan software companies in the world. They use the data of actually closed loans to give insight into a variety of factors, including this very important fact, and that is that VA loans close around the exact same rate any other loan type, including conventional loans. The variance is less than a couple of days, okay? We mentioned in that video where we go into more detail on that data, here at Low VA Rates, we actually are faster than the average processing time that ICE technology reports. Myth number three, VA loans take longer to close. Well, again, that's incorrect. The fact is that same reporting that you can get from ICE mortgage technology, it includes the amount of time it takes to close each major loan type. And on average, their reporting shows that VA loans close about as quickly as any other loan type that they track. Here's the fourth myth. VA appraisal processing can cause delays and perhaps could cause you to miss your closing date. Now, while it is true that the VA appraisal is a more comprehensive appraisal than other appraisal types, it is still usually completed within 10 days from when it was requested. It's no longer. Myth number 5, VA appraisers typically undervalue your home. Now, the fact is, while the VA appraisal has a longer checklist of requirements to help make sure the home is safe, sound, and sanitary, those extra requirements do not affect the valuation of the home. Your home valuation done by a VA appraiser is the exact sort of evaluation that it would have on an FHA or conventional loan. The big factors that might affect your home value, like the roof, for example, are actually not unique to VA loans. That's going to be the case regardless of the appraisal type. So the valuation in these situations would be affected by a faulty roof, for example, whether you used conventional, VA, FHA, USDA. Myth number 6, sellers have to cover all or some of the veteran borrower's closing costs. Now, here's the facts of the matter. While it's true, the VA does allow you, the seller or a potential seller, to cover up to 4% of the borrower's closing costs. It is not required. It's simply optional. Now, in today's market where housing prices have kind of come down, we're seeing on all loan types more and more sellers covering closing costs. So today, this is even less of an accurate myth, okay? Instead, what VA loans do allow is if there are non-allowable closing costs, for example, a pest inspection, those costs are almost always absorbed by the lender. For example, here at Low VA Rates, we take that in consideration if there's a pest inspection involved. It is not mandatory that the seller cover that. In this market, again, most sellers are willing to do that. Now, here's the 7th myth we talked about. And this one I just don't understand, and that is realtors, real estate agents, have to take lower commissions on VA loans. Now, like with most loans, the commission for both the seller's agent and the buyer's agent is taken out of the sale proceeds. There are absolutely no rules that limit the commission that a selling agent or a buyer's agent can get on a VA loan. So as long as the seller agrees to the commission listed in the purchase agreement, the agent can ask for whatever commission they want. So let's wrap this up. Now that we've disputed all of the most common myths that lead to VA loan discrimination, you can be more confident when choosing to use your VA home loan benefits to buy your next home. If you run into these objections, you now have more knowledge. You can get more by following us online to help you overcome these obstacles and objections that you might end up facing. Thanks for watching. This is Eric with Low VA Rates. We hope to help you out on your next loan.